Tonka.
Good morning, Bill.
What a wonderful setting we are meeting in today.
Absolutely beautiful place.
We would like to discuss what we are doing here. But first, I would like to explain how we got here. Where are we, Tonka? Why don't you explain that?
Well, at the moment we're in Yosemite, which is part of the Vtime environment, which is Starship. They're an organisation that were around in the early 80s for the early gaming, and they've produced this wonderful social app called Vtime, which is where we're sitting at the moment. And this is Yosemite Valley, and as you can see, it's a beautiful place to be, very tranquil. Couldn't have chosen a better setting, Bill.
Okay.
Although, Bill,
well,
I have noticed. Okay, excellent. I have noticed between us there is a bit of a delay with our responses. Shall we explain to the viewers why there's a delay between me talking and you answering?
Okay. Well, as you know, I'm located in California, and I live out in the country, so I have to use satellite communications for my internet. And the delay time between my Earth station and the satellite in the Earth station Arizona, where it hits the fiber optic network at that point, is about 677 milliseconds on the ping. From that point, the signal jumps on a fiber optic network and travels over the land and then over the undersea cable to Great Britain. And that delay time to London, from London to Arizona, is only 81 milliseconds. So our total time between the time I speak and the time you hear me is roughly half of 750 milliseconds. So that's why we tend to talk over each other in this medium. If I was on a land fiber network, our round trip would only be, on the ping, would only be around 80 milliseconds. So it's quite interesting, the technology that's involved with virtual reality and talking to someone across the pond.
So basically, Bill, it's almost it's a miracle of modern day science is how we're actually able to do what we're doing now, because without all of this technology, you and I couldn't be having this discussion.
That is true.
Wow.
You know, I remember when I was a boy, I had an Uncle Bill Burt, who was an electronics engineer that worked in aerospace. Excuse me.
That's okay, Bill.
And when I was about 8 years old, he brought over 2 tin cans and a string and some wax and showed me how to make a tin can telephone, and that was kind of cool. And
they were cool.
Later on, Engineer Bill brought me a mic and a receiver from a telephone, and we hooked up some wires and a battery and had a one-way conversation. That was kind of neat also.
That's actually, I mean, when you go back that far, I mean, even then, that was the start of modern technology, and even then, that was, if you go back sort of 200-300 years ago, they'd have probably called you a witch or something, and nowadays, we call it ancient, and at the time, that was the most modern thing type of scenario for communication.
Right. You know, from that point, we kind of built a crystal radio, and out of a coil and a cat's whisker, a thing called a cat's whisker, which really wasn't a cat's whisker, it was just a wire, and an earphone. And we could listen to some AM radio channels. That was kind of nice also.
What was the quality like, Bill? Was it good quality, the actual signal?
No, no, the signal was very scratchy in those days. Crystal radios are basic receivers, and you get a lot of static. But then when I got into high school, we built some 1 and 3 tube radios back in 1959, and my Uncle Bill helped me build a CB radio, and I think you folks in Britain use CB radios to communicate with each other in the country. I know we did here. If a person lived out on a farm, if a person lived out on a farm, they could use a CB radio to communicate with the people in town and order groceries. That was because they didn't have any telephones out there at that time, so they used the radios, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the days of the CB radio. They were phenomenal at the time. I mean, it was the only way to communicate from either house to your friends, or if you was in a car journey and you had to go a distance, it was the only way of communicating was using a CB radio. There was no mobile phones or anything else like that, so we had no choice, CB or literally nothing, or stop at the local telephone box.
Yeah, you were saying that if you wanted to make a phone call, you had to walk down to the corner and find a phone box. Is that true?
That's very true. Yes, very true. And in the village I live in, there was one phone box which I think is about a mile away on the very outskirts of the village. So you can imagine, nasty weather, not very nice thing to be doing. So CB radio was a godsend.
By the way, talking about weather, what's the weather like in England today?
Well, funny enough, Bill, it's spring here, and what we've got is we've had rain, thunder, snow, and sun. So we've had all of it today.
You've had snow? I didn't think it snowed where you were.
No, we had snow. When I say snow, it was snowing, but it didn't settle. It was just came from nowhere, an absolute surprise. And there it was. Yeah, it does snow in England, but where I am, it normally doesn't snow that much. But yeah, it seemed to really come down today in different weathers.
Wow. Yeah, it's the sun is just coming up here in California, and it looks like it's going to be a clear, windy day. We're getting a little breeze, and I live in a oak-treed forest, and you can tell that it's windy because the trees are blowing.
Yeah, it's not very pleasant here today, Bill, I have to be honest. Yeah, it's not very pleasant, but this is good old English weather.
Okay,
anyway, Bill, so where did you go from there? After you built the radio station, the radio set, where did you go from there? What was your next move?
In 1966, I went to work for General Telephone of California as a telephone installer. And from there, I went into switching systems, data communications, and in 1977, I helped install a T1 line for RAND Corporation in Santa Monica, California. This was one of the first MIP locations for the new ARPANET, which eventually became the Internet. And in those days, that network was top secret. I mean, it went between think tanks, both in RAND Corporation and Systems Development Corporation, UCLA, Stanford, all the think tanks were linking up with the ARPANET. And in the very beginning, the government wanted to jump in there. They were looking for funding, and the government wanted to jump in there and use it for military. And the scientists at the universities wanted it for research. And so they battled back and forth a little while, and eventually it ended up just research. And the militaries sprung off to another type of network. Same technical aspects that the ARPANET was, but they called it a different name and separated it from the educational side, which was a good thing. because then it became open eventually. In the 80s, it became open to the public, and they invented email. And I remember having a 300 bit per second modem and an email address and no one to talk to. It was kind of weird. I've always been into high tech, and in '77 I built an MSI 8080 computer, and it was programmed by switches on the front of it. I think it had 4K of RAM and no hard disk. There wasn't any such thing at the time. And when I programmed it in hexadecimal code with switches across the front, and I think after about a week of programming, I came up with a little game that was similar to Pong, where you batted a ball back and forth on a CRT. It's kind of crazy.
Oh God, I remember Pong. Wow, that's an awful lot to do. And of course, at that time, this was cutting edge technology, of course.
Yes, it was. At that time, the fastest speeds on the ARPANET were 1.544 megabits, and little did we know that in the year 2016 we would be sending at 20 to 60 megabits per second between you and I.
Now that is an absolute miracle of modern day science, because I suppose in those days it was never perceived that you would ever go much faster than what you was doing. To go as fast as we are now is just, it's got to be mind blowing in comparison.
Yeah, that's true. And that brings us to where we're at today. You and I are talking in virtual reality. You are in England using a Samsung S6 cellular phone and a Gear VR virtual reality headset. And you're connected to a Wi-Fi router in your house that is also hooked up to the British telephone network. And in comparison, I am in California, USA, using a Samsung S7 phone and a Gear VR headset. And I'm connected to a Wi-Fi router, which is connected to a satellite modem. And I am basically an Earth station in California, and I beam up to a satellite and then beam back down to Arizona to the Earth station there, where we connect to a fiber optic network that then is part of the internet itself. And my speed between you and I are about 20 megabits per second. And these routers run internet protocol similar to what was used by the early ARPANET in the 1970s.
So am I understanding correctly then, basically, the ARPANET really is the grandfather of the internet then?
That is correct. That is correct. In the early 80s, they turned it over to public use, and everybody could jump on board, and it's grown from there. And then they started building fiber optic networks to tie everything in. Before that, it was T1 lines at 1.544 megabit, and I did a lot of those in those days. And now it's all connected with super high-speed fiber optics, and the delay time is almost nothing. You know, some of the POPs that you connect to on landline over fiber, it's 2 millisecond ping time. It's amazingly fast.
So if I'm right in saying then, Bill, really everybody out on the internet shouldn't necessarily be grateful to you personally, but for people like you and for the jobs that you did and everybody else did, they've got you to thank for there being an internet in the first place. Because without the likes of you and other people who work so hard on this program, this would never be happening now.
Yeah, really, you know, the people today don't realize how many thousands and thousands of scientists and engineers, technicians and programmers it took to make this all happen. And it's truly amazing. Like the program we're using is called Vtime, and it is a virtual reality program that runs on Oculus software and Samsung equipment. And it's developed by a company called Starship out of Liverpool, England. So it's not just the people in America that made this work. The original ARPANET was the thought processes. There was a couple of engineers, or a couple of scientists in England and a couple of them in the United States, and they collaborated on how all this should work, and they came up with the ARPANET.
Oh, do you know, Bill, this is a conversation I could continue forever and ever because I actually really enjoy this. I just find it an amazing history of science to where we are now. But without being rude to the viewers, we don't want to give too many spoilers away at this particular moment, Bill. So is there anything else you'd like to add to that? Or should we keep them in suspense?
Well, let's see. Only that we plan to have technical discussions once a week and post it on the internet. And I think that's probably all I have for today. I know I would like you to come up with some stuff for next week. We'll keep them in suspense.
We will. I have a few ideas. I have a few ideas.
Okay.
I do.
Then I think that's enough technobabble for today. Until next time, my brother, e pluribus unum.
So mote it be.